The road wasn't on any map. Daniel had checked twice, once on his GPS, and again on the crumpled, coffee-stained paper map his grandfather kept in the glove compartment. Both showed a blank stretch of green where the road now slithered like a scar through the Virginia backwoods. A narrow, cracked lane, swallowed by weeds and shadowed by towering pines, it looked like something that hadn't felt a tire in decades. But the sign stood there anyway, rusted, bullet-riddled, leaning to one side. Coldwater Hollow, 7 miles. Shortcut, said Mia, grinning from the passenger seat. We'll shave off an hour easy. Daniel hesitated, his hands gripping the steering wheel. The forest beyond looked ancient, older than anything man should have carved a road through. The trees grew too close, their roots tearing up the asphalt like claws, and the air itself felt thicker, heavy, suffocating, as though it had been holding its breath for a very long time. But the group was restless. Tara in the back was scrolling through her phone, muttering about lost signal. Eli, her boyfriend, cracked open another beer, smirking. And Lucas, their quiet friend, stared out the window, not at the road, but into the woods, as if something was watching them. They were 5 friends on a road trip to the mountains, chasing cheap thrills and forgotten places. But sometimes, places are forgotten for a reason. The van's tires hit the first bend of Coldwater Hollow Road, and the sound changed. It was subtle at first, the hum of rubber over asphalt deepened into something rough, gritty, like grinding bones. The forest swallowed the light as they drove deeper. Sunlight fractured into pale, dying strands through the canopy, turning everything an eerie greenish-gray. Creepy as hell, Mia muttered, lowering her window. A chill wind slithered in, smelling of damp earth and rot. No birds. No crickets. Only the faint whisper of branches rubbing together like old, dry bones. Half an hour in, the GPS froze completely. The map flickered, then went blank. Lost connection, Daniel said, tapping the screen. Lucas leaned forward. Maybe we should turn back. Roads like this, they go nowhere. Eli laughed. Relax, man. It's just trees. You city kids get spooked too easy. But Lucas wasn't laughing. His eyes hadn't left the forest once. I saw something, he whispered. Back there, by the trees. The others turned, squinting through the dust-covered rear window. Nothing but miles of road and pine. Yet Daniel's stomach turned cold. He hadn't seen anything, but he'd felt it. That crawling awareness. That unnatural stillness, like the forest was listening. A few more miles, and the van's engine began to sputter. Daniel frowned, tapping the gauge. We've got half a tank. What the hell? The lights dimmed. The radio cut to static. Then a voice flickered through, just a crackle of distorted words before fading. Turn, back. Mia reached for the dial, but the sound vanished. And then they saw it, a shape by the roadside. At first, it looked like a scarecrow. A tall, thin figure bound to a wooden pole, its skin mottled and gray. But as they passed, the head turned. The mouth opened wide, too wide, and something black dripped from it. Daniel slammed the brakes. What the hell was that? They all sat frozen. The figure hadn't moved again. It just hung there, limp and silent, its hollow eyes fixed on the van. Eli swore under his breath. Just some hillbilly art project. Let's keep going. But as they pulled forward, the forest seemed to close in tighter. The air thickened with the stench of decay. More of those things appeared, hanging from trees, half buried in the mud, nailed to signs that once marked the road. Each one looked more human than the last. And then, the road ended. The asphalt crumbled into dirt, leading straight into a wall of trees. A rotting wooden gate stood crookedly ahead, a faded hand-painted sign nailed to it. Stay out. The hollow is hungry. Daniel's throat went dry. We're turning around. But when he looked behind them, the road was gone. The forest had swallowed it whole. Mia screamed. Tara dropped her phone, staring out the window as shadows began to move between the trees. Shapes, crawling, dragging, whispering. Lucas spoke in a trembling voice. "They're back." "Who?" Daniel asked. Lucas turned slowly, his eyes wide with something beyond fear. "The family." The wind carried a faint sound then, laughter. Human, but wrong. And from somewhere deep in the woods, something began to howl. The laughter faded into the trees, replaced by a silence so deep it hurt their ears. The group sat frozen, eyes wide, breath shallow. The forest was alive, pulsing around them, not with life, but with something that watched, waited, and whispered. Daniel gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "We're going to reverse," he muttered, forcing his voice to stay calm. "We'll find another way back." He shifted the van into reverse and pressed the gas. The engine groaned but didn't move. The tires spun helplessly, kicking up chunks of wet dirt. They weren't stuck. The road was gone. Mia twisted around, her voice trembling. "Dan, there's nothing back there. No road. It's just trees." He glanced through the rear window. Where there should have been an empty stretch of pavement, there was now a wall of dense pine. The trunks stood impossibly close together, forming a natural barrier that hadn't been there minutes ago. Eli leaned out the side window, squinting. "I don't get it. We drove straight through here. How the hell?" A loud snap cut him off. A branch broke somewhere deep in the woods. Then another. Closer. Lucas whispered, "They're coming." Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. "Who's coming?" Lucas didn't answer. He just kept staring into the woods. The faint outline of figures moved between the trees, slipping in and out of the mist. They were human-shaped, but too tall, too thin. Some crawled on all fours. Others hung from the trees, their heads twitching as if broken. "Get out of the van," Daniel ordered. "We'll walk. Maybe there's another path." "No," Mia snapped. "We're not leaving this van." But before anyone could argue, something hit the roof. Thud. The entire van rocked. Tara screamed, clutching Eli. Another thud came, heavier, closer, then the crunch of metal as claws raked down the windshield, leaving deep gouges in the glass. Eli swung open the door and jumped out, shouting into the trees, "Who the hell's out there?" The forest didn't answer. Only the wind sighed through the branches, a long, slow breath. Then a voice replied. Not from the woods. From above. "Welcome home." Eli looked up just in time to see a figure drop from a tree branch, landing with a wet smack in the mud. It was a man, or what was left of one. His face was a grotesque mask of scars and stitches, his mouth stretched unnaturally wide, filled with sharpened teeth. His eyes were milky white, his skin hanging in folds. He smiled. And then he charged. Daniel yanked the gearshift, slammed his foot on the gas. The van lurched forward just as Eli screamed. The creature hit him, dragging him into the ditch. The others saw flashes, flailing arms, tearing flesh. Eli's muffled cry cut short. "Drive, Daniel, drive!" Mia shrieked. The van jolted through the mud, bouncing violently as they tore down what looked like an old dirt trail. Branches whipped the windshield. Shadows moved alongside them, keeping pace. Tara sobbed in the back seat, her voice breaking. "Eli's gone. Oh God, he's gone." Lucas turned to her, face pale. "He's not the first. This place, it eats people." "My brother." Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror. "What do you mean, your brother?" Lucas swallowed hard. "He came here years ago. 2012, the road wasn't supposed to exist. They said a landslide buried it, but he still came looking for it. He disappeared. They never found his body. And you didn't think to tell us this earlier? Mia screamed. Lucas looked at her, eyes hollow. Because I didn't believe it was real, until now. The van burst out into a clearing, a wide, overgrown area littered with old vehicles. Rusted cars, trucks, campers. Their doors hung open like mouths. All of them were torn apart, stripped down to metal and bone. This must be where they bring them, Tara whispered. Something moved among the wrecks, a flicker of movement, a shadow dragging a limp body. Then another. The family was here. Daniel slammed the brakes. The headlights swept over a shape standing in the center of the clearing, a massive man with a stitched-up face and a butcher's apron made of tanned human skin. In his hand, he held a blood-slick machete. He grinned. Behind him, the others emerged from the shadows, crawling, limping, grinning with rotted teeth. A whole clan of them. Generations of inbreeding, madness, and hunger. Lucas whispered, trembling, "They've been waiting for the road to open again." The biggest one pointed toward the van, his voice deep and broken. "Dinner's here." And then they charged. Daniel floored the gas. The van roared forward, right as something leapt onto the hood, slamming its face into the windshield, teeth gnashing against the glass. Mia screamed. The headlights flickered. The last thing Daniel saw before everything went black was a pair of pale eyes staring at him through the cracks in the windshield, eyes that didn't blink. The hollow was hungry again. When Daniel woke, the world was red. His head throbbed, his vision blurred. The van was on its side, glass shattered, steam hissing from the crushed hood. He could taste iron, blood, running down his lip. Somewhere nearby, a woman was screaming. "Mia," he croaked, fumbling with his seatbelt. It was jammed. He kicked the door open and crawled out, his hands slipping on mud. The forest pressed close, thick and suffocating, shrouded in mist that glowed faintly from the van's dying headlights. Mia was outside, her face streaked with tears and dirt. She was trying to pull Tara from the back seat, but Tara wasn't moving. Her eyes were open, glassy and fixed on nothing. The jagged end of a metal rod jutted through her shoulder. "Oh God, no, no, no," Mia whispered, her voice cracking. "She's not dead, Dan, she can't be." But she was. Lucas stumbled out from the other side, coughing, his clothes soaked in blood that didn't look like his. He looked around wildly. "Where are they? Where are they?" "They're gone," Daniel rasped. "The family." Before he could finish, a sound rolled through the trees. A low, distant hum. It wasn't wind. It was voices. Dozens of them. Laughing, muttering, chanting words that made no sense. Mia froze. "That's them." Lucas clutched his head. "They do this before they hunt. It's their way of calling to each other." Daniel stared at him. "How do you know that?" Lucas didn't answer. He just looked deeper into the forest, eyes hollow. Something cracked nearby, a bone breaking, maybe. Then another. And from behind the wrecked van, a figure appeared. It was Eli. But not really. His body moved wrong, stiff, broken. His head hung at an unnatural angle, his neck twisted too far. When he raised his face, Daniel's breath stopped. Eli's skin had been peeled in patches, his eyes hollowed out, his mouth crudely sewn into a twisted smile. Mia screamed. Eli, or what was left of him, took a step forward. Then another. From behind him, shapes emerged. The family. 7 of them at first. Then more. Deformed silhouettes in the fog, hunched, disfigured bodies, faces that looked melted, teeth sharpened like animal fangs. They carried tools, axes, rusted hooks, jagged blades. Some dragged pieces of bone behind them. The leader stepped into the light. He was enormous, his shoulders hunched, his head bald and scarred. His face was stitched together from pieces that didn't belong, his nose missing, his eyes uneven, one gray, one black. His mouth stretched into a grotesque grin as he sniffed the air. "Fresh," he rasped. "Been too long." Mia clutched Daniel's arm, trembling violently. "Please. Daniel, what do we do?" The man tilted his head, staring straight at her. "You scream pretty," he said, voice deep and cracked. "Mama likes the screamers." Behind him, a woman's laugh echoed, high, shrill, and insane. From the shadows, a woman emerged dragging a sack of bones, her face wrapped in another woman's scalp. Her eyes burned with madness. "Mama missed company," she cooed. "You should have stayed away from our road." Daniel grabbed Mia's hand. "Run." They sprinted into the woods. Lucas followed, limping, clutching his bleeding arm. Behind them, the family howled, a chorus of rage and hunger that shook the trees. Branches clawed their faces as they ran. The forest seemed endless, a maze of black trunks and tangled roots. The air smelled of rot and iron. Somewhere behind them, something massive crashed through the brush, snapping trees like twigs. Lucas gasped, "We can't outrun them." "Then we hide." Daniel hissed, pulling Mia toward a hollow log. They crawled inside, the space tight and damp. Their breathing was ragged, hearts pounding loud enough to give them away. Through a crack in the wood, Daniel could see shapes moving past, torchlight flickering, shadows dancing across the forest floor. The family was searching, grunting and laughing. One stopped right beside the log. A pair of filthy boots. Daniel held his breath. The figure crouched. A long knife scraped against the wood. Then a low voice murmured, almost tenderly, "Found you." The blade pierced through the log, missing Daniel's face by an inch. Mia muffled a cry. The man laughed. "You smell good, girl." A gunshot exploded nearby. The man dropped. The forest went still. Daniel turned toward the sound. A flashlight flickered through the trees. A man stepped into view, scruffy, blood-stained, carrying an old hunting rifle. His eyes were cold and sunken, his beard streaked with gray. "Get up," he said. "If you want to live, you follow me. Now." "Who are you?" Daniel asked. The man looked over his shoulder, his expression grim. "Name's Roy. I've been hunting these bastards for 20 years. Behind him, the laughter started again, louder, closer. Roy chambered another round. "And they just found us." The woods swallowed them whole. Roy moved fast, barely making a sound despite the rifle slung over his shoulder and the gear strapped to his back. Daniel and Mia stumbled behind him, their breathing ragged, mud clinging to their legs. Lucas limped, clutching his arm, every step a muffled grunt of pain. Behind them, the laughter still echoed, distant now, but getting closer. The family was tracking them, sniffing the air like wolves. "Keep low," Roy hissed. "Don't talk. Don't breathe loud. They hear better than you think." Mia clung to Daniel's sleeve, whispering, "Who are they?" Roy didn't turn around. "Old blood. Been here long before the maps changed. The mountain folk that never left when the mines closed. When the rest of Virginia forgot this place, they stayed. They fed on each other to survive, and something in these woods kept them alive." Lucas stumbled over a root. "Fed on." Roy shot him a glare. "You don't want to know." "Not now." They broke through a thicket of thornbush and found themselves at the edge of a ravine. Below was a dark cabin, half buried in earth, lit only by a single lantern in the window. Smoke trickled from the chimney. Roy gestured down. "My place." "Move." Daniel hesitated. You live out here. Roy's eyes hardened. You want to keep breathing, you move. They slid down the slope, dirt and roots tearing at their clothes. Roy led them inside quickly, bolting the heavy door behind them. The cabin was a tomb of shadows and old wood, cluttered with hunting traps, bones, and maps pinned to the walls, hand-drawn, showing winding paths and circles marked X. Daniel stared. You've been watching them? Roy nodded, lighting another lantern. Studying them. Counting them. Killing when I can. He opened a wooden chest and pulled out a box of bullets. But they always come back. Every time I take one down, another takes its place. A family that don't die easy. Mia's voice trembled. Why? Why do they keep killing people? Roy loaded the rifle, his expression grim. 'Cause that's what keeps them alive. Blood. Flesh. The hollow feeds through them. It's not just the land, it's alive. You step on this road, it remembers you. You become part of it. Daniel felt his stomach twist. That's impossible. Roy looked at him sharply. You think so? Then how do you explain that road? It disappears and comes back every 20 years. Always when it's hungry. Lucas, pale and shaking, whispered, my brother, came here 13 years ago. He never came back. Roy's expression darkened. Then he's in the hollow now. Just like the rest. A sudden bang rattled the door. Everyone froze. Mia gasped. They found us. Roy motioned for silence and crouched by the window. Through the glass, faint torchlight flickered between the trees. Shadows moved, slow, deliberate. The sound of dragging chains and low, guttural whispers filled the air. They don't stop, Roy whispered. They never stop. Daniel picked up a metal pipe from the floor, his hands shaking. We can't stay here. Roy turned to him. You step outside that door, boy, and the woods take you. You fight in here, you might last till sunrise. But the pounding grew louder. The window glass trembled. Something scraped against the wall, nails, long and sharp. Then a voice, deep and wet, murmured from outside. Roy, you can't hide forever. Mia's face went white. They know your name. Roy's eyes burned with fury. They should. I killed their kin. The wall suddenly cracked as something massive slammed into it. The lanterns flickered. From the window, a pale, disfigured face pressed against the glass, its lips sewn shut, eyes wide and smiling. Blood smeared the pane as it dragged its teeth across it. Lucas screamed. Roy fired. The glass shattered, and the creature fell back with a guttural snarl. But more came. Figures emerged from the darkness, crawling, limping, dragging themselves toward the cabin. One clutched a human jawbone as a weapon. Another wore the skull of a deer, its eye sockets glowing faintly red. Roy fired again and again. Each shot echoed through the woods like thunder. But they just kept coming. They don't die. Mia cried. They do, Roy growled, slamming another shell in. You just have to hit what's left of their heart. Something crashed through the roof. A hulking form landed in the middle of the cabin, snarling, eyes wild. It was the stitched-faced leader, his machete gleaming in the firelight. He looked at Roy and smiled. Brother, he rasped. Mama's been waiting for you. Daniel froze. Brother? Roy's face hardened with guilt. The leader stepped closer, his grin stretching impossibly wide. You left the family, Roy. But you can't leave the blood. Roy aimed his rifle at him, but his hands were trembling. The leader's voice dropped to a whisper that made every hair on Daniel's neck rise. The hollow never lets its own go. And then the lights went out. Darkness. Thick, suffocating, absolute. The lanterns had gone out when the roof gave way. All that remained was the glow of dying embers in the fireplace, just enough to cast long, twitching shadows across the cabin walls. Something moved in those shadows. Slowly. Purposefully. Daniel could hear Mia's panicked breathing beside him, quick and shallow. Lucas whimpered from across the room, his body slumped against the floorboards. Roy was nowhere in sight. Only the creak of the broken roof above and the faint drip of rainwater filled the silence. Then, a low voice, soft and rasping. "Roy, it's time to come home." The stitched-faced leader stepped into the firelight. His grin was split too wide, stretching nearly to his ears. Strips of flesh hung from his neck like ribbons, and his pale, colorless eyes gleamed with childlike glee. Daniel grabbed a broken piece of wood, his only weapon. His heart pounded so hard it drowned out everything else. The creature sniffed the air and turned toward him, smiling. "You smell like fear." It took a slow, dragging step forward. The floorboards moaned under its weight. Daniel raised the wood, trembling, but before he could swing, a deafening gunshot split the air. Roy stood in the doorway, smoke curling from the barrel of his rifle. The bullet tore through the leader's shoulder, but he didn't fall, he just laughed. "Always was a lousy shot," the creature rasped. "Mama's waiting for you, brother." Roy fired again, once, twice, hitting him square in the chest. The monster stumbled backward, his laughter gurgling with blood. Then he turned and fled into the woods, vanishing into the mist. Roy slammed the door shut, panting. "We're leaving. Now." "Where?" Daniel shouted. "There's nowhere to go." Roy's face was grim. "There's one place. The Hollow's heart. Mama's house." Mia's voice broke. "You want to go toward them?" Roy met her gaze with eyes that were more haunted than afraid. "You can't outrun the Hollow. You end it. Or you become part of it." They gathered what they could, a flashlight, a knife, the last 2 bullets, and slipped into the rain-soaked forest. Every sound around them was wrong, the whisper of branches, the creak of unseen movement, the faint, wet sound of something breathing too close. Roy led them along a narrow, winding trail, the mud deep and cold around their feet. The deeper they went, the stranger the forest became. The trees twisted in unnatural shapes, bark splitting like skin. Skulls hung from the branches, small ones, animal-like at first, then human. A crude wooden sign appeared nailed to a tree. "Welcome home, Roy." Mia grabbed Daniel's arm. "They knew we'd come. They wanted us to," Roy muttered. "Mama doesn't wait long for dinner." They reached a clearing at last. In the center stood a massive, rotting house built from mismatched wood and bones. Animal pelts hung from the porch. The windows glowed faintly red, like eyes in the dark. "Mama's house," Roy whispered. "Where it all began." A smell hit them then, thick, nauseating. Blood, decay, something cooked and burnt. Daniel gagged. Mia covered her nose. Lucas fell to his knees, trembling violently. "She's in there," Roy said, loading his last bullet. "The one that started it. The one who keeps the road alive." They crept up the creaking porch steps. The door was ajar. Inside, faint flickers of candlelight danced along the walls. The floor was lined with bones, hundreds of them, bleached white, arranged like patterns. At the far end of the room sat her Mama. She was enormous, her body fused with the chair she sat on, skin pale and veined, stretched too tight over bone. Her face was half hidden beneath a shroud of hair. Her arms were long, swollen, ending in sharp nails black as tar. And her voice, when she spoke, was both a whisper and a growl. "You brought my boy back." Roy raised his rifle. "You're no mother. You're the devil that cursed this place." Mama's head tilted, bones cracking. I made this family eternal. You turned your back on them. Daniel stared in horror as the walls began to move, flesh pulsating beneath the wood, shapes pressing out from underneath like trapped souls. Roy aimed at Mama's chest. It ends tonight. She smiled. Then let it feed. The floor split open beneath them. Hands, gray, rotten, endless, burst from the ground, grabbing their legs, pulling them down into the earth. Mia screamed. Lucas disappeared in seconds, swallowed whole. Roy fired his last shot. The bullet hit Mama square in the heart, but instead of dying, she laughed. You can't kill what's already part of you, she hissed. The walls bled. The candles went out. And the hollow began to eat them alive. The earth swallowed them whole. Daniel felt himself falling, weightless, tumbling through a choking blackness that smelled of wet soil and rot. The screams of Mia and Roy echoed around him, fading and returning as if the air itself twisted sound. His fingers clawed at the dirt walls, but they moved like flesh, soft, pulsing, alive. Then, with a sickening thud, he hit the ground. For a long, dizzy moment, he just lay there, gasping in the dark. His flashlight was gone. The air was thick, wet, and heavy with the stench of death. Somewhere in the distance, he heard dripping water, and beneath it, something slower. A heartbeat. Daniel, a voice whispered. He turned. Mia was crawling toward him, her face streaked with blood and mud. Her eyes were wide with horror, but she was alive. Where's Roy? Daniel asked, voice shaking. Before she could answer, a light flickered to life, Roy's flashlight, a few yards away. He was standing, gunless, staring down a tunnel that led deeper underground. The walls pulsed faintly, as if veins ran through them. We're under the hollow, Roy said, his voice low, hollow. This is where it feeds. Mia shivered. It's breathing. And it was. The tunnel walls expanded and contracted with a slow, rhythmic motion, a living corridor of dirt and bone. Faint whispers filled the air, words that seemed to crawl inside their skulls. Stay, join, belong. Roy's jaw tightened. Keep moving. Don't listen. They moved through the passage in single file, their footsteps echoing wetly. The deeper they went, the more the tunnel changed. Bones jutted from the walls like ribs. Faces formed in the dirt, twisted, screaming faces that moved when they passed, eyes rolling beneath thin layers of mud. Mia sobbed softly. They're alive. Roy nodded grimly. The hollow doesn't kill right away. It keeps you. Feeds on you slowly. Daniel's breath came in short bursts. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, but behind them, he could hear movement, dragging footsteps, low growls. The family was coming. The tunnel opened suddenly into a vast underground chamber. The walls glowed faintly red from veins that pulsed with blood. The ceiling was so high it vanished into darkness, and the ground was soft, almost spongy. At the center stood a grotesque totem made of bones, flesh, and rusted metal. Skulls were fused into its surface, their jaws moving silently as if whispering prayers. Roy raised his light. That's it. The hollow's heart. Daniel stared in horror. What do we do? Roy knelt, pulling a small bundle of dynamite from his coat. I've been saving this for years. Thought I'd die before I ever found it again. He began planting the explosives around the totem, his hands shaking. Once this goes up, the hollow dies, and everything tied to it burns. A faint giggle echoed behind them. Mia turned, her voice breaking. Roy. From the tunnel they'd come through, figures began to crawl out, the family. Dozens of them. Their skin glistened in the red light, bodies twisted beyond recognition. Their faces were stretched, mouths full of teeth. And leading them was the stitched-faced man. Roy stood. You should have stayed buried. The man laughed, blood running from his lips. "Mama said no one leaves the hollow, brother." He charged. Roy fired his last shell straight into the creature's face. The shot tore through him, but instead of falling, the man staggered forward, his head splitting open to reveal something black and moving inside. A wet, serpentine tendril slithered out, writhing in the air. Roy grabbed the detonator. "Get out!" Daniel pulled Mia toward the far side of the chamber, stumbling through the red light. The family screamed, rushing forward. Hands clawed at them. Teeth bit into Daniel's sleeve, ripping fabric and skin. Roy stood his ground. "This ends now." The stitched-faced creature lunged, knocking Roy to the ground. They grappled, rolling across the flesh-like floor. Roy jammed the detonator against the creature's chest and snarled, "Tell Mama I'm coming home." He pressed the trigger. A blinding flash tore through the hollow. The totem exploded, bones and blood flying like shrapnel. The walls screamed, not just noise, but voices, hundreds of them. The ground heaved and split open. Daniel and Mia ran, dirt and fire raining down around them. The tunnel behind them collapsed, swallowing the screams of the family. They climbed toward the faint glow of daylight ahead, lungs burning. When they burst through the ground, they fell into a clearing, the same road they'd entered hours ago. Smoke poured from cracks in the earth. Mia coughed violently. Did we do it?" Daniel turned back. The forest was still. Silent. For the first time, no laughter, no whispers. Just the wind. But Roy was gone. Where the hollow had been, there was only a charred scar in the ground, and at its center, something moved. A single hand, burned and blackened, clawed its way up from the ashes. Roy's voice, faint, broken, echoed from below. "It's not dead, not yet." And then the forest began to breathe again. The wind howled through the treetops like a voice remembering how to scream. Mia and Daniel staggered onto the cracked, forgotten road, their faces streaked with ash and blood. The sun was setting behind the mountains, burning red through the haze of smoke. Everything was silent now, too silent. Daniel turned back toward the gaping scar in the earth. Flames still licked the edges, sending up a black, oily smoke that smelled like rotting flesh. He wanted to believe it was over, that Roy's sacrifice had destroyed the hollow. But deep down, he knew better. "Come on," Mia whispered, gripping his arm. "We just need to find a way out." They followed the road. Their shadows stretched long across the cracked asphalt, the forest closing in tighter with every step. The map was useless, no GPS signal, no direction, just the endless Appalachian wilderness pressing in around them. "Roy's gone," Daniel muttered. "He blew it all to hell." Mia shook her head, her voice trembling. "The forest doesn't die. It waits." Her words lingered, cold as the air itself. They walked for what felt like hours. The road twisted unnaturally, looping through the same landmarks, a rusted road sign half swallowed by vines, a burned-out pickup truck, a tree carved with dozens of names. When they passed the same spot a third time, Daniel stopped dead. "Mia, we've been here before." She looked around, her breath shaking. "No, that's not possible. We're walking straight." Daniel knelt beside the sign, brushing away soot. Beneath the layers of moss and grime, he saw something carved into the metal, crude letters etched deep. "Some roads don't lead out." The woods whispered as if mocking him. A sound echoed, a crunch of gravel. Someone walking. Slow. Heavy. Daniel raised his head. "Mia." But Mia was frozen, staring past him. Her face went pale. From the curve of the road ahead, a figure emerged through the mist. Limping. Smoke still rising off his shoulders. His skin was blackened, torn, his eyes burned red with something unnatural. Roy. Except it wasn't Roy anymore. His voice came out like two people speaking at once, his own and something deeper, guttural. You shouldn't have left me. Mia stumbled back. Roy, oh my God. He smiled, the skin on his face cracking. It remembers me now. It kept me. Daniel took a step back. Roy, listen. But the forest around them shifted. The trees bent, groaning like bones under pressure. The earth pulsed beneath their feet, a low heartbeat returning. Mia screamed as arms broke through the dirt beside the road, human arms, grasping, pulling themselves free. Dozens of half-rotted bodies emerged, covered in soil, their mouths full of black sap. The family. The hollow had rebirthed them. Daniel pulled Mia and ran. The forest howled behind them, laughter, screams, the sounds of something ancient waking up. The road stretched on, endless, shifting beneath their feet. But no matter how far they ran, they never reached. The end. The trees began to close in again, branches knitting together like ribs. The road disappeared beneath the soil. Ahead of them, the mist parted, revealing a clearing. And at its center, the old road sign stood again. Welcome to the hollow road. Mia collapsed to her knees, sobbing. It's a loop. We're trapped here. Roy appeared behind them, his voice low and wrong. The hollow doesn't let go. It remembers. Daniel grabbed a piece of metal from the wrecked sign, raising it like a weapon. You're not Roy. Roy tilted his head, his burnt skin stretching into a smile. No. But he's still in here, screaming. He lunged. Daniel swung, slashing across Roy's neck. Black blood sprayed the air, sizzling as it hit the ground. Roy staggered, laughing. You can't kill what's already part of it. The forest shuddered. Roots burst from the ground, wrapping around Daniel's legs, pulling him down. Mia screamed, grabbing his hands, but the earth opened beneath them. The smell of rot and burning flesh filled the air. Mia. Don't let go, he cried. She held on until her fingernails tore. The roots yanked Daniel downward, his scream echoing through the trees as he was dragged into the living soil. And then there was silence. Mia fell back, trembling, staring at the ground where he'd vanished. The dirt shifted once, twice, then went still. She looked up, and saw Roy standing over her, smiling. His shadow stretched across the road, impossibly long. You can't leave, he whispered. No one ever does. The forest closed in around her. The road beneath her cracked, splitting open like a mouth. As she screamed, the trees bent low, their bark splitting to reveal veins pulsing with red light. Then, darkness. Hours later, the road lay empty again. The forest was still, except for the faint rustle of the wind and a single whisper carried through the trees. Some roads should stay buried. As dawn broke, a distant engine roared. A new car approached the mountain pass, four hikers laughing, taking a shortcut through Virginia's forgotten woods. The sign at the crossroads pointed toward the trail. A new one, freshly painted. Hollow Road, Scenic Route. And beneath it, barely visible under the rust, a handprint, burned into the metal. The forest exhaled. The hollow remembered. The end.